aren't just great-grandpa anymore. You are part of a massive team of spirits looking out for the family. The control path, the experience path. If you don't have children, you stay an individual soul and keep respawning into new lives. You aren't trying to build a family. You are trying to learn everything. The job. You become a student of the universe. The goal. To become a master teacher, a medium soul, or an old soul. Eventually, you join a group of 144,000 super souls called the COM, Collective Overmind, who basically run the server for the whole planet. 2. The leveling system for control souls. If you choose the path of experience, no kids, you go through 4 grades, kind of like high school. Young soul, freshman, you're just here for the vibes. You want to experience everything. Being rich, being poor, traveling, failing, succeeding. You don't remember your past lives, but you have gut feelings about things you're naturally good at. Medium souls, sophomore/junior, you've seen it all. Now, you start feeling like you need to help others. You become a teacher, a mentor, or a wise friend. You start remembering lessons from your past lives. Old soul, senior, you're tired. You've lived so many lives that you can see how everything is connected. You can practically feel what other people are thinking because you've been there before. The COM, the principal's office. You graduate. You stop being you and join a team of 144,000 souls who exist outside of time. You help guide the entire human race from behind the scenes. 3. Why this matters. This theory is trying to explain why humans are so different. Why some people love family. They are wired for the ancestral path. They find meaning in their kids and history. Why some people never want kids. They might be control souls who feel a push to keep learning and experiencing new things instead of settling down. The jading. Ever feel like you're just done with everything? This theory says that's called the jading. It's what happens when an old soul has worked too hard and needs to plug back into the ancestors or the COM to recharge their battery. Summary table. This is the Soul Collective's framework, a novel dual-path system for spiritual evolution based on reproductive choice. It proposes that human consciousness follows one of 2 trajectories: the ancestral soul path, which is reproductive and focuses on genetic continuity, or the control soul path, which is experiential and non-reproductive, focusing on wisdom accumulation and teaching. The framework draws heavily on precedents from comparative religion. The ancestral path, where souls merge into collective entities for genetic descendants, is shown to parallel East Asian ancestor veneration, African diasporic traditions, and Indo-European concepts like the Roman communes. The control path, which involves developmental stages from young soul to medium soul, teachers, to old soul, is structurally similar to Buddhist systems like the Bodhisattva ideal, Gnostic hierarchies, and esoteric concepts like the communion of saints. The framework resolves the Bodhisattva paradox by suggesting that teaching engagement is a structural necessity for medium soul status. The model addresses the classical problem of reincarnation memory by proposing graduated retention. Young souls retain implicit learning, medium souls access conscious inner life wisdom, and old souls maintain simultaneous multi-temporal awareness. The ultimate collective consciousness entity, or COM, is theorized to emerge from synchronized old souls, drawing an analogy to compositional panpsychism. A central mechanism is the reproduction trigger, which anchors consciousness to physical lineage, necessitating a shift to the collective ancestral form. The paper explores complications from modern bioethics, such as surrogacy and gamete donation, suggesting the trigger may depend on conscious intention more than biology alone. Testable implications are proposed across several fields. Parents might show increased orientation toward long-term future outcomes, while childless individuals might demonstrate broader experiential seeking. Near-death experiences and past life memories could. Soul collectives. A dual-path framework for spiritual evolution. An interdisciplinary analysis integrating comparative religion, consciousness studies, and evolutionary theory. Abstract. This paper presents and expands upon a novel framework for understanding spiritual evolution through a dual-path system based on reproductive choice. The Soul Collectives. Model proposes that human consciousness follows one of 2 evolutionary trajectories: the ancestral soul path, reproductive, or the control soul path, experiential. This framework is analyzed through the lenses of comparative religion, consciousness studies, evolutionary psychology, and systems theory. We examine historical precedents in world religions, explore theoretical mechanisms for soul evolution, and propose testable hypotheses where this spiritual framework intersects with empirical observation. The paper concludes with implications for bioethics, social policy, and individual meaning-making in an era of declining birth rates and expanding reproductive technologies. 1. Introduction. 1.1. The reproduction spirituality nexus. Human reproduction has universally been imbued with spiritual significance across cultures and epochs. From ancestor veneration in Confucian and African traditional religions to the Vedic concept of RNA, debt to ancestors requiring offspring, reproductive continuation has often been framed as a sacred duty. Berger, 2010, Richter, 2013. Conversely, non-reproductive spiritual paths, monasticism, asceticism, shamanic traditions, have equally ancient pedigrees, suggesting a fundamental duality in human spiritual orientation. Brown, 1988, Eliade, 1964. The Soul Collective's framework formalizes this duality into a comprehensive system, where reproductive choice determines not merely social role, but fundamental ontological trajectory. This paper examines whether such a framework represents merely creative mythology, or whether it identifies genuine structural principles underlying diverse spiritual traditions. 1.2 Theoretical Foundations. The proposed framework draws implicitly on several established theoretical domains. Perennialist philosophy. The notion that diverse religious traditions point toward universal spiritual truths. Huxley, 1945. Smith, 1976. Consciousness evolution theory. Models proposing developmental stages of consciousness. Gebser, 1985. Wilbur, 1995. Collective consciousness. Durkheimian concepts of shared spiritual reality. Durkheim, 1912-1995. Panpsychism and emergent complexity. Modern philosophical frameworks suggesting consciousness as fundamental and compositional. Chalmers, 1996. Goff, 2019. 1.3 Methodological approach. This analysis employs comparative phenomenology to identify structural parallels between the Soul Collective's model and established traditions, theoretical extrapolation to explore logical implications, and interdisciplinary synthesis to examine consistency with findings from psychology, neuroscience, and evolutionary biology. 2. Historical and cross-cultural precedents. 2.1. The ancestral soul path in world religions. 2.1.1 East Asian ancestor veneration. The concept of ancestral souls merging into collective spiritual entities finds striking parallels in Chinese religious practice. The transformation of deceased individuals into Shen, spirits, who maintain active concern for descendants, represents a functional equivalent to the ancestral soul path. 1948. Jordan, 1972. Korean Jesa rituals and Japanese IE household systems similarly conceive of ancestors as forming a continuous spiritual lineage with ongoing agency in the lives of the living. Kendall, 1985. Smith, 1974. The ancestral soul path's preservation and guidance of genetic descendants directly parallels the filial piety, Xiao, complex that structures these traditions. Original contribution, the Soul Collective's model, universalizes what has been culturally specific, proposing that these practices represent culturally mediated recognition of an underlying spiritual architecture rather than culturally constructed beliefs alone. 2.1.2 African diasporic traditions. Yoruba concepts of Igungan, ancestral spirits, who remain actively involved with their lineages, and the broader African understanding of the living dead who persist as long as they are remembered. Mbidi, 1969, align with the ancestral soul collective consciousness concept. The Vodou LWA of familial lines, LWA Razin, similarly suggest ancestral spirits organizing into coherent guidance entities. Brown, 1991. 2.1.3 Indo-European traditions. The Roman manes, Greek chthonic deities with familial associations, and the Vedic Pitters, fathers/ancestors, all suggest conceptualizations of ancestors as forming collective spiritual presences. Fustel de Coulanges, 1864-2001. The Srada ceremonies in Hinduism explicitly conceive of feeding and maintaining ancestors as a collective. Pandey, 1969. 2.2. The control soul path and wisdom traditions. 2.2.1 Buddhist Bodhisattva system. The progression from Sravaka, listener/learner, to Bodhisattva, enlightenment being, to Buddha, awakened one, bears structural similarity to the young soul right-pointing arrow, medium soul right-pointing arrow, old soul right-pointing arrow calm progression. Bodhisattvas who postpone final nirvana to guide others directly parallel medium souls and old souls. Williams, 1989. Dayal, 1932. The concept of Jataka tales, stories of Buddha's previous lives across various circumstances, parallels the young soul phase of accumulating diverse experiential wisdom. The Bodhisattva's development of upaya, skillful means, for teaching different beings parallels medium soul pedagogical functions. Pai, 1978. Original contribution, the Soul Collective's framework resolves the Bodhisattva paradox, why enlightened beings would choose continued suffering. If medium soul status requires active teaching engagement, this becomes not a choice, but an inherent structural feature of that developmental stage. 2.2.2 Gnostic and Hermetic Traditions. Gnostic cosmology's division between hylics, material-bound, psychics, soul-endowed, and pneumatics, spirit-bearing humans, Pagel's 1979, parallels young, medium, and old soul distinctions. The Hermetic concept of the nous, divine mind, operating through successive initiatory grades, Fowden 1986, similarly suggests hierarchical spiritual development. The Neoplatonic emanation hierarchy, from the one down through nous, world soul, to individual souls, Plotinus, Ennead's IVV, can be reinterpreted as the calm right-pointing arrow, old soul right-pointing arrow, medium soul right-pointing arrow, young soul hierarchy in reverse. 2.2.3 Esoteric Christianity and Theosophy. The Christian concept of the communion of saints, perfected souls assisting the living, parallels old souls and calms. Medieval mystics like Meister Eckhart's concept of the Funken, spark, that transcends while remaining immanent, McGinn 1981, suggests consciousness operating at multiple levels simultaneously, similar to old soul multi-awareness capacity. Theosophical frameworks, particularly Alice Bailey's hierarchy of spiritual masters and the concept of the 144,000 in Revelation chapter 7 verse 4, provide direct precedent for the COM system, though with different functional descriptions. Bailey 1922, Hanegraaff 1996. 2.3 The teacher archetype across traditions. The universal presence of the guru, rabbi, sheikh, sensei, or elder figure suggests the medium soul role as cross-culturally recognized. Characteristics consistently attributed to authentic teachers, having lived many lives, metaphorically, seeing into students' needs, maintaining detachment while caring deeply, align with medium soul attributes. Palmer 1998. Indigenous concepts of old souls in young bodies, shamanic training requiring prior life preparation, and the recognition of tulkas, reincarnated teachers, in Tibetan Buddhism, all suggest implicit recognition of the soul development hierarchy. Halifax, 1979. Govinda, 1960. 3. Theoretical mechanisms and expansions. 3.1 Consciousness continuity and memory retention. 3.1.1 The problem of continuity. Classical reincarnation models face the continuity problem. If personal memory is lost between lives, in what sense is it the same soul? Derek Parfit's work on personal identity suggests psychological continuity requires memory chains. Parfit, 1984. The Soul Collectives model addresses this by proposing graduated memory retention. Young souls, experiential learning without conscious recall, similar to implicit memory. Medium souls, conscious interlife access to accumulated wisdom. Old souls, simultaneous awareness across temporal instances. Original contribution. This graduated system resolves the continuity problem by proposing that identity persistence operates on different principles at different developmental stages, initially through dispositional patterns, analogous to procedural memory, later through explicit recall, and finally through simultaneous multi-temporal awareness. 3.1.2 Neural correlates and analogies. Modern neuroscience's discovery of distinct memory systems, procedural, semantic, episodic, working memory, provides a useful analogy. Squire and Zola, 1996. Young souls might retain procedural/dispositional learning, why some children display unusual skills or fears. Medium souls access semantic memory, knowledge, across lives, and old souls maintain episodic memory, autobiographical awareness, across incarnations. The phenomenon of childhood memories fading, while their influence persists, parallels how young soul experiences shape future incarnations without conscious recall. Ian Stevenson's research on children's past life memories, Stevenson 1997, could be interpreted as occasional young soul memory leakage or early medium soul development. 3.2 The emergence of collective consciousness. 3.2.1 Compositional panpsychism and calm souls. Philip Goff's and others' work on panpsychism proposes that consciousness combines. Individual conscious elements can form higher-level conscious entities. Goff, 2019. Seeger, 2016. This provides a theoretical framework for understanding how old souls might synchronize into calm consciousness without losing individual awareness. The combination problem, how microconsciousness becomes macroconsciousness, parallels the calm formation question. The framework's proposal that calms emerge spontaneously from synchronization rather than through aggregation suggests a threshold or phase transition model similar to emergentist theories of consciousness. Bedow and Humphreys, 2008. Original contribution. If comms represent a distinct ontological category, consciousness that is simultaneously individual and collective, this might provide insights into the hard problem of consciousness itself. The comm model suggests consciousness is inherently compositional, and that our experience of unitary selfhood, despite neuronal multiplicity, might be a scaled-down version of the same principle. 3.2.2 Morphic Resonance and Field Theory. Rupert Sheldrake's controversial concept of morphic fields, that systems are shaped by similar past systems through non-physical connections, could provide a mechanism for ancestral soul collective wisdom transmission. Sheldrake, 1981. While not accepted by mainstream science, it offers a theoretical model for how genetic descendants might access ancestral experience patterns. Alternatively, quantum entanglement and non-locality principles, while operating at different scales, demonstrate that spatially separated elements can maintain coordinated states. Bell, 1964. This provides at least a conceptual precedent for non-physical information transfer across the soul collective system. 3.3. The reproduction trigger mechanism. 3.3.1. Why reproduction as the differentiator. The framework's core mechanism, that biological reproduction determines soul path, requires theoretical justification. Several explanatory models can be proposed. The investment theory, reproduction, represents the deepest form of existential investment in material continuity. Creating genetic descendants anchors consciousness to physical lineage in a way that experiential learning across lifetimes cannot. The branching point theory. Reproduction creates ontological branching. You now exist both as yourself and as the genetic foundation for new beings. This fundamental division of self may necessitate consciousness reorganization into the collective ancestral form. The completion theory. Reproduction completes a cycle, allowing the soul to graduate from individual sequential existence into timeless collective presence, while non-reproduction maintains the soul in the experiential learning cycle. 3.3.2 Edge cases and complications. Modern reproductive technology creates theoretical complications. Gamete donation without parenting. Does genetic contribution alone trigger ancestral path, or is the parenting relationship essential? Adoption. Does parental consciousness shaping of non-genetic children create an ancestral bond? Surrogacy. Which participants experience the path trigger? Posthumous reproduction. Can ancestral merging occur retroactively? Original contribution. These edge cases suggest that the trigger may not be purely biological, but rather involves the intention and consciousness of reproductive engagement. This would align with many spiritual traditions that emphasize conscious intention over mechanical action. 3.4. The 144,000 and mathematical mysticism. 3.4.1 Symbolic and structural significance. The number 144,000, 12 times 12 times 1,000, appears in Revelation, but also in Mayan and other calendrical systems. Its use here might represent functional sufficiency, the minimum number of consciousness nodes needed to manage Earth's soul system. Harmonic resonance, a number with mathematical properties enabling stable synchronization. Dimensional scaling, 12 dimensions times 12,000 possible human experience types equals complete coverage. Original contribution. If the comm system functions analogously to a distributed computing network, 144,000 might represent the optimal number for redundancy, coverage, and efficiency, similar to how peer-to-peer networks require minimum node numbers for stability. 3.4.2 Expansion beyond Earth. The framework suggests that other inhabited worlds might require their own comm systems, or that Earth's 144,000 might be a subset of a universal system. This implies local optimization. Each planetary/species system develops comms suited to its specific consciousness ecology. Hierarchical nesting, local comms, 144,000, might themselves form metacomms at galactic scales. Universe-specific architecture. Each universe might require complete comm instantiation. 4. The jading problem and spiritual pathology. 4.1 Old soul exhaustion. The framework's identification of the jading, spiritual exhaustion among old souls, parallels burnout in caregiving professions, compassion fatigue in healthcare workers, and the documented phenomenon of wisdom traditions periodically losing vitality. Figley, 1995. Carney et al., 2009. Original contribution. If old soul jading contributes to historical dark ages, this suggests that civilizational collapse may have spiritual structural causes, not merely material ones. Periods where fewer medium souls and old souls maintain active incarnations would result in reduced spiritual teaching, potentially explaining why wisdom traditions periodically need renewal movements. 4.2 Prevention and recovery mechanisms. The framework proposes 3 safeguards against jading. Ancestral communion. Old souls maintaining connection with ancestral collectives for renewal. Peer synchronization, old souls gathering to share burden and restore perspective. Service rotation, periodic withdrawal from active teaching into contemplative restoration. These parallel documented practices across traditions, sabbatical cycles, periodic retreats, and mutual support networks among spiritual teachers. Palmer, 1998. 4.3. The ambition filter. The deliberate concealment of calm existence until achievement prevents spiritual ambition from corrupting the path. This addresses a persistent problem in spiritual communities: how to maintain growth motivation while avoiding egoic attainment seeking. Cornfield, 1993. Original contribution. This hidden promotion system parallels certain esoteric traditions, where higher initiations aren't revealed until achieved, but formalizes it as a systemic feature rather than organizational practice. It suggests that spiritual development requires unconscious teleology, moving toward goals that cannot be explicitly held as goals. 5. Empirical intersections and testable implications. 5.1. Differential phenomenology by reproductive status. If the framework has validity, we might expect measurable differences in consciousness, experience, or behavior between those who have reproduced and those who have not, beyond obvious parenting-related changes. Hypothesis 1. Parents might show increased concern for long-term future outcomes, ancestral orientation toward descendants, compared to non-parents controlling for age and other factors. Hypothesis 2. Childless individuals might demonstrate broader experiential seeking, traveling more, changing careers more frequently, exploring diverse philosophical systems, consistent with young soul accumulation drives. Hypothesis 3. Individuals recognized across cultures as having old soul qualities might statistically be more likely to be childless and engaged in teaching/mentoring roles. Preliminary research on child-free individuals shows higher prioritization of personal growth and experience diversity. Blackstone and Stewart, 2012, though causality could run multiple directions. 5.2. Near-death experience patterns. If souls follow developmental trajectories, near-death experience (NDE) content might vary systematically. Hypothesis 4. Parents might more frequently report encounters with deceased ancestors during NDEs, while non-parents might report spirit guides or teachers. Hypothesis 5. Individuals with extensive teaching backgrounds might report being shown students they will guide in future lives, or experiencing multi-perspective awareness. NDE research by Pim van Lommel and others has documented diverse experience patterns, though systematic analysis by reproductive status hasn't been conducted. Van Lommel et al., 2001. 5.3. Reincarnation research patterns. Ian Stevenson's research on children claiming past life memories could be analyzed through this framework. Hypothesis 6. Children with verified past life memories might be disproportionately from lineages with childless relatives, control soul path family members. Hypothesis 7. The specific types of memories recalled, experiential versus relational, might differ in predictable ways. 5.4. Exceptional individuals and soul development. Hypothesis 8. Historically recognized spiritual teachers, mystics, and wisdom keepers might show statistically higher rates of childlessness than demographic baselines for their eras, consistent with medium soul/old soul status. Preliminary analysis of major religious founders and mystics suggests elevated childlessness rates, though celibacy vows confound this, but systematic study would be required. McGuire, 2008. 6. Sociological and ethical implications. 6.1. Revaluing reproductive diversity. Western societies have historically stigmatized childlessness, while other cultures mandate reproduction as social duty. The Soul Collective's framework proposes that both paths hold equal spiritual validity. Implication 1. Social policy should support both reproductive and non-reproductive life paths equally, recognizing each as serving essential spiritual evolutionary functions. Implication 2. Educational and career systems should create specific roles for wisdom transmission, potential medium soul functions, beyond academic teaching. Implication 3. The current demographic transition toward lower birth rates in developed nations might represent not social pathology, but a natural adjustment in the ancestral/control path ratio as humanity
reaches certain development thresholds. 6.2 Bioethics of reproductive technology. If reproduction triggers ancestral path transition, emerging technologies raise new questions. Question 1. Does genetic engineering that substantially alters offspring genetics still trigger ancestral bonding, or does it create a disconnect? Question 2. Would artificial womb technology or substantially non-biological reproduction create novel soul path variants? Question 3. Should reproductive technologies be approached with awareness of potential spiritual implications beyond medical and social considerations? 6.3 Education and human development. Implication 4. If young souls learn through direct experience and medium souls through teaching, educational systems should be designed to accommodate both experiential learning and pedagogical development. Implication 5. Recognizing that some individuals may be operating at different soul development levels could inform personalized educational approaches not as hierarchy, but as developmental differentiation. Implication 6. The current crisis in finding meaning and purpose among young adults might be addressed by frameworks that explain different life paths as equally valid spiritual trajectories. 6.4 Responses to mortality and meaning. Implication 7. For those facing childlessness, chosen or circumstantial, this framework offers meaning. Their lives serve experiential learning and potential teaching functions rather than representing evolutionary failure. Implication 8. For those who have reproduced, understanding the ancestral collected dimension might provide comfort regarding death not ending but transformation into a different mode of consciousness and continued connection with descendants. 7. Critiques, limitations, and counterarguments. 7.1 Unfalsifiability concerns. Critique. The framework may be unfalsifiable design so that no evidence could disprove it, making it metaphysics rather than testable theory. Response. While the framework's ultimate claims about post-mortem consciousness states are indeed unfalsifiable with current methods. Section 5 proposes testable correlates and predictions. Moreover, framework serving meaning, making functions retain value even if not empirically testable in all dimensions. See much of ethics, aesthetics, and existential philosophy. 7.2 Cultural bias. Critique. The framework may reflect Western individualist assumptions, projecting linear development onto spiritual states that other traditions see as simultaneous or non-hierarchical. Response. The framework does draw from hierarchical developmental models common in Western thought. However, the ancestral control duality reflects genuinely cross-cultural themes. Future work should explore how this framework might be reformulated in non-hierarchical terms or how it interfaces with cyclical spiritual cosmologies. 7.3 Gender and reproductive justice. Critique. Linking spiritual path to reproductive status risks reinforcing pronatalist pressures, particularly on women, or devaluing those who are involuntarily childless. Response. The framework explicitly posits both paths as equal in spiritual value. However, implementation risks are real. Any reproductive determinism framework could be misused. The emphasis must remain that this describes spiritual mechanics, not prescriptive mandates, and that both paths serve essential functions. 7.4 The problem of evil. Critique. If medium souls and old souls guide young souls, why do horrific experiences occur? The framework risks suggesting that suffering serves teaching purposes in ways that minimize real harm. Response. The framework proposes that souls choose challenging incarnations for growth, not that suffering itself is good, but that all suffering serves growth. Moreover, human agency and systemic causes create much suffering independent of soul-level mechanics. This requires careful ethical navigation to avoid misuse. 7.5 Reductionism concerns. Critique. Reducing spiritual development to a schematic system risks losing the ineffable, mysterious dimensions that traditions wisely preserve. Response. All frameworks model and simplify. The question is whether the model reveals more than it obscures. The Soul Collective's framework should be held lightly as one possible map, not mistaken for the territory itself. 8. Philosophical expansions and original contributions. 8.1 The temporal paradox of Zoan souls. Zoans exist outside linear time while still intervening in temporal processes. This raises philosophical puzzles about causation and divine foreknowledge debates. Original contribution. The Zoan system might operate on something like block universe physics where all time exists simultaneously, allowing Zoans to coordinate interventions across what humans experience as past, present, and future. See Eternalism in Philosophy of Time. McTaggart, 1908. 8.2 Experience as ultimate value. The framework implicitly proposes that consciousness experiencing existence from every possible angle represents a fundamental cosmic value or purpose. Original contribution. This suggests the experiential completeness teleology, the universe organizing to know itself thoroughly through diverse conscious perspectives. This aligns with process philosophy, Whitehead, 1929, and some interpretations of quantum mechanics where observation of experience plays a constitutive role. Stapp, 1993. 8.3 The ethics of soul path choice. If soul paths are determined by reproductive choice, does this mean individuals make metaphysically consequential decisions without full information? Original contribution. This parallels existentialist freedom. We are condemned to be free. Sartre, 1943-1956. Making irrevocable choices with incomplete information. The framework suggests this is a feature, not a bug. Genuine choice requires genuine consequences. However, it also suggests that souls at some level know what they're choosing, even if human personalities don't consciously recognize this. 8.4 The theodicy of the system. Why would such a system exist rather than some other spiritual architecture? Original contribution. The dual path system elegantly solves the problem of combining genetic and physical continuity ancestral path with experiential wisdom accumulation control path. It represents a division of labor in spiritual evolution. Some souls specialize in lineage continuity, others in experience diversity. This is more robust than single path systems and prevents monopolization, all souls forced into one developmental pattern. 9. Synthesis and future research directions. 9.1 Integrative summary. The Soul Collective's framework presents a comprehensive spiritual ecology addressing 1. The reproduction spirituality relationship, formalizing the universal but varied ways cultures have linked fertility with spiritual status. 2. Reincarnation mechanics, providing specific developmental stages and memory retention patterns that address classical objections. 3. The teacher archetype, explaining why wisdom figures appear across cultures with consistent characteristics. 4. Purpose and meaning, offering teleological frameworks for both reproductive and non-reproductive lives. 5. Collective consciousness, proposing specific mechanisms for how individual consciousness might aggregate into higher order awareness. 9.2 Research agendas. 9.2.1 Empirical psychology and neuroscience. Black circle systematic studies of consciousness differences between parents and non-parents. Black circle NDE content analysis by reproductive status and teaching involvement. Black circle longitudinal studies tracking experiential diversity patterns across different life paths. Black circle investigation of whether old soul recognition correlates with measurable traits. 9.2.2 Comparative religion and anthropology. Black circle comprehensive cross-cultural mapping of ancestral and teacher traditions onto the framework. Black circle analysis of how different cultures balance the two paths in their spiritual economies. Black circle historical study of whether dark ages correlate with apparent teacher shortages. Black circle exploration of indigenous frameworks that may have preserved these concepts more explicitly. 9.2.3 Philosophy and theoretical development. Black circle formal logical analysis of the consciousness composition problem as it relates to SOMs. Black circle exploration of temporal mechanics as SOMs operate outside linear time. Black circle development of a rigorous ethics based on soul path differentiation. Black circle integration with contemporary philosophy of mind and personal identity. 9.2.4 Applied ethics and social policy. Black circle bioethics frame works for reproductive technology considering spiritual implications. Black circle educational reforms based on experiential versus pedagogical soul development needs. Black circle social policy valuing both reproductive and non-reproductive contributions. Black circle end of life care informed by different spiritual path transitions. 9.3 Limitations and cautions. This framework, however comprehensive, remains speculative. It should be approached as 1. One possible map, a model for thinking about spiritual development, not dogma. 2. Culturally situated, emerging from specific philosophical lineages despite cross-cultural elements. 3. Ethically fraught, requiring careful implementation to avoid reinforcing harmful hierarchies. 4. Empirically limited, many claims remaining beyond current verification methods. 10. Conclusion. The Soul Collective's framework offers a systematic spiritual ecology that addresses perennial questions about reincarnation, purpose, consciousness, and the relationship between physical reproduction and spiritual development, by proposing that human souls follow either an ancestral path through biological reproduction or a control path through experiential learning and eventual teaching. It provides 1. Explanatory power for cross-cultural spiritual patterns involving ancestors and teachers. 2. Resolution of theoretical problems and reincarnation models regarding memory and identity. 3. Meaning frameworks for diverse life choices in an era of reproductive freedom. 4. Testable implications where spiritual claims intersect with empirical observation. 5. Ethical guidance for navigating bioethical challenges and social policy. The framework's most significant contributions may be Black circle egalitarian spirituality. Both reproductive and non-reproductive paths serve essential, equally valuable functions. Black circle consciousness composition. CONs as models for how individual awareness might aggregate into collective consciousness. Black circle developmental nuance. Not all souls at the same stage, explaining diversity in human spiritual capacity and interest. Black circle systemic thinking. Spiritual evolution as ecology requiring multiple niches and roles. Whether this framework describes metaphysical reality, provides useful fiction for meaning, making, or represents a collective unconscious archetype. It offers rich territory for contemplation, research, and application. In an age of declining birth rates, expanding reproductive technologies, and widespread struggles with meaning and purpose, frameworks that honor diverse paths while proposing coherent developmental trajectories may prove valuable regardless of ultimate metaphysical truth status. The Soul Collective's model invites us to see both parents and non-parents as engaged in essential spiritual work, both individual experience and collective wisdom as necessary, and both temporal lineage and eternal consciousness as dimensions of a comprehensive spiritual architecture. Future research will determine whether this framework reveals genuine structural principles underlying human spiritual experience or represents a particularly well-elaborated contemporary mythology. Either outcome contributes to the ongoing human project of understanding consciousness, meaning, and our place in the cosmos. References. Baillier, 1922. Initiation, Human and Solar. Lucifer Publishing Company. Dow Meters A. and Humphreys P. eds.